Joe Biden. And he's going to speak in a minute, but there's a lot of love in this room for our president.
Here's what he had to say about the rule changes that Harris wanted for their debate.
President Trump, would you want the microphones muted in the debate whenever you're not speaking?
We agreed to the same rules. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have it probably on, but the agreement was that it would be the same as it was last time. In that case, it was muted. I didn't like it the last time, but it worked out fine. I mean, ask Biden how it worked out. It was fine. And I think it should be the same. We agreed to the same rules and same specifications. And I think that's probably what it should be. But they're trying to change it. The truth is they're trying to get out of it because she doesn't want to debate. She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
Now, I'm really not sure what President Trump is talking about because Harris speaks really well. She can complete sentences and can sometimes mix that in with a bunch of laughter. She's also really good at reading notes that were obviously prepared for her by somebody else.
I have a very simple message for my Democrat friends, my independent friends, those who may not be sure about who they're voting for in this election. Dick Cheney has just made the choice very clear. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney, the architect of everything that has gone wrong in the Middle East for the last few decades. And so it's interesting because if you listen to the New York Times or some of the other mainstream media, they're saying, oh, don't expect much from Kamala Harris in the way of policies and details and plans, and we're not going to know much about what kind of president she's going to be because she doesn't have much time. They're conveniently ignoring the fact that she's been there working in the White House the last 3.5 years alongside Joe Biden. She's been the last one in the room, according to her, as these big decisions are being made.
And it explains why she's pissed off that ABC News isn't letting her get away with the pre-written notes in her debate with Donald Trump. In fact, her campaign's crying that the VP is going to be disadvantaged fundamentally against Trump in this debate.
Democrats have called Dick Cheney a war criminal for 20 years. And now all of a sudden, they're clapping like seals to get his endorsement. This does not strike me as people who are interested in listening to your conservative viewpoints. They are hungry for power. They will take Dick Cheney's endorsement today. But believe you me, in their hearts, they wouldn't want to go out to dinner with Dick Cheney, let alone have him have any influence over the next government. And I doubt that he would.
Actually, I'm honored to have their endorsement. And I think that what they both, as leaders who are well respected, are making an important statement that it's okay, and if not important, to put country above party. And I'm honored to have their support, and I think it's an important statement right now. People are exhausted about the division and the attempts to kind of divide us as Americans. And them stepping up to make this public statement, I think, is courageous, but also for people like the folks I was just talking with, it really reinforces for them that we love our country and we have more in common than what separates us.
The hypocrisy within the Democratic Party continues to grow under Vice President Kamala Harris.
Because we're here in North Carolina, I think it is crucially important for people to recognize not only is what I've just said about the danger that Trump poses something that should prevent people from voting for him, but I don't believe that we have the luxury of writing in candidates' names, particularly in swing states. And as a conservative, as someone who believes in and cares about the Constitution, I have thought deeply about this. And because of the danger that Donald Trump poses, not only am I not voting for Donald Trump, but I will be voting for Kamala Harris in this election.
With both Dick and Liz Cheney endorsing her, Kamala Harris now has another dick that's supporting her cause. And unfortunately for Kamala Harris, this may be one dick too many for her to handle. And I also want you guys to remember that she said that Americans are exhausted about the division within our country. I'll circle back to that one in a little bit later. Now, she was recently in Pittsburgh where she tried to talk to people inside of a specific store. Now, the store that I'm talking about here is called PANICS. Now, I'm going to explain why this store was chosen for her visit, but I want to show you guys the theatrics that they've put up for the vice president. Check this out. And guys, before we get started, please take a second, hit the like button for the video. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. Let's get started.
I think you understand. I'm pretty sure you know.
Oh, it's gonna be good. We're gonna be good. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. We are all in this together.
Yes, we are.
We're gonna be fine.
we are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Thank you so much.
Huh?
Thank you so
Did you get some spices? Oh, it's all good. It's all good. We're standing strong, right? We love our country. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
That looks like a really heartwarming moment, right? That is until you visit PANICS. You see, the store doesn't like you if you're a Republican. And they even have sort of a disclaimer on their own website that specifically explains why they don't like the Republican Party. This is in line with their CEO's racist email to their own customers from a few years ago. So here's what their CEO, Bill Penzi, wrote to customers. If you're a Republican voter, you are now cheesed off. You were promised that there would never be any accountability for your support of the party of an open textbook racism. Sorry, but for the betterment of all Americans, you included, we've decided to end that rule. And I really don't care what your race is or how many of your friends happen to be whatever. None of that excuses you. Are any of you guys surprised that this is the spot that Kamala Harris's team picked out as the stop? And remember that Harris is the one that says that Americans are tired of being divided. And yet, this store has spent around $100,000 in ads back in 2019 calling for Donald Trump's impeachment. They also labeled Republicans as racists. So yes, it's really not surprising that she visited this spot. It reminds me that we're not even sure if this crowd here is even real. Maybe they've been bussed in. I believe it might have been like a few weeks ago when this happened in Primanti Brothers Sandwiches, another store in Pittsburgh. They serve food, beers, and cater to baseball fans. But one day, the bartender suddenly said that it was the last call at 3:30 p.m. Now, obviously, patrons were surprised because it was like way too early in the day for that. The reason they were thrown out of the restaurant was for Kamala Harris to put on her own set of supporters inside the establishment to create this campaign stunt. Her campaign is so faked that she doesn't even want to mingle with real Americans who are actually enjoying their day at a local spot. But we're supposed to believe that these crowds are shouting for Kamala Harris, that they're all legitimate supporters. Now, to make the idea even worse, guys, it's now being rumored that her campaign is dependent on bussing in supporters to her events.
Well, behind me, hundreds of invited Harris supporters are leaving and boarding shuttle buses. This was a departure for Kamala Harris, leaving toss-up states to come to New Hampshire, which according to polls is no longer considered one. But she came with details of an economic plan that has New Hampshire in mind.
Vice President Kamala Harris stormed into the Northampton Brewery in front of a cheering crowd of invited supporters, some of whom invited her to help voters get to know her better.
This back and forth between the, discourse and stuff is pretty much played out. You want to start to hear more about what she's going to do.
And she tried to do that today, outlining an economic policy of tax breaks for small businesses who make up a large portion of the state's economy.
So I want to see 25 million new small business applications by the end of my first term.
That includes an expansion of tax incentives.
Part of my plan is we will expand the tax deduction for startups to $50,000. It's essentially a tax cut for starting a small business.
Invited supporters? What would the media say if Donald Trump, if ever, bussed in supporters to swing states? Oh, they would probably crucify him if he did that. But Kamala Harris busts in hundreds of loyal supporters and we're expected to be okay with it. In reality, this is a circus, guys. They're creating hype over nothing. And it really just shows you how far they're willing to go to keep their office. That they would fabricate excitement for her campaign when in reality, things are not looking up. He talked about the power of weapons, nuclear weapons in particular, but other weapons also, as he said that he knows the weapons better than anybody because he's the one that bought them. He promised that we won't have World War III when he's elected. But with these clowns that you have in there right now, referring to Biden and Harris, you're going to end up having World War III, and it's going to be a war like no other. Case in point, war broke out in the Ukraine in 2022 when Russia invaded the nation. Another war broke out in the Middle East late October when Hamas terrorists launched attacks on Israel. Trump argued that if he were in the Oval Office over the last 3.5 years, wars would not have sparked out in Israel or Ukraine. He said that October 7th, when Israel-Hamas war started, it would have never happened if he were the president. This was just one of the policy questions Trump fielded with Fox News' Sean Hannity in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, just days ahead of his first debate against Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's not forget though, Trump won the state in 2016 when he earned 44,292 more votes than the Democratic nominee, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The state then elected President Joe Biden in his matchup against Trump in 2020 at a 1.17% margin. Needless to say, guys, both parties want to win the Keystone State. Both Harris and Donald Trump repeatedly visited Pennsylvania in recent weeks. Harris was most recently joined by Biden in the president's first campaign event for the Harris Waltz ticket since he bowed out of the race in July. And in just a few short days, Trump and Harris will take the stage in Pennsylvania for their first and perhaps only debate, which is going to be held in Philadelphia. I think it's really odd that the Donald Trump assassination attempt was taking place in Pennsylvania, the very state that is so key to both presidential hopefuls. Again, I don't believe in coincidences. Me personally, I think they wanted to, number one, take Donald Trump out of the race altogether, but at a minimum, the attempt should have scared him away from the state, and it didn't work. Another issue Donald Trump brought up in his Pennsylvania town hall pre-debate was the spiraling illegal immigration that has plagued the United States since 2021. Former President Trump said that they want open borders. She wants open borders. He didn't miss calling out Harris for her flip-flop on the border. He said that the vice president is all of a sudden, oh, I think we're closing the borders. She was the border czar, whether you like it or not. But even if you don't want to use that term, she was in charge of the border. As a result, Donald Trump said it's the worst border in the history of the world, not just here. There's never been a country that allowed 21 million people to come in over a 3-year period. There's never been. He also mentioned that out of the 21 million people, many are from prisons, many of whom are murderers and drug dealers and child traffickers. I would say that this is pretty relevant considering immigration is the second most important issue to voters behind the economy heading into the 2024 election, according to recent Fox News polling. Now, as for our economy, Trump predicted that the United States will fall into an economic depression if Harris wins the general election on November 5th. He said it'll be like 1929. This will be a 1929 depression. According to Trump, Harris has no idea what the hell she's doing. He compared that to how he gave Americans the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country. These Trump tax cuts are also about to expire, and Kamala Harris wants to terminate them. According to the former president, if you do that, you will suffer the biggest tax increase in history. There's never been a tax increase like it, on top of which she wants to add a lot of tax. Trump cited Harris's proposal on capital tax gains and her plan to install price controls on companies to combat price gouging as evidence that the United States would just hit more financial woes similar to the Great Depression if Harris is elected to the Oval Office. She even wants to tax unrealized gains. He talked about Kamala Harris's father, who he called a Marxist teacher of economics, hence a 1929 style depression. That's what Donald Trump thinks will happen to our country already, as the Biden-Harris administration has set us on a path. On foreign policy, Trump declared that he was the toughest on Russia when he served as president, while again arguing wars in foreign nations would not have sparked out if he was in the Oval Office. He pointed out that Putin would never even say Trump was killing them with his opposition to the Nord Stream pipeline. This was the biggest job that they've ever had, and Donald Trump said that he stopped it. And the same could be said for Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Leaked footage confirms that Alvin Bragg came after Donald Trump with a case that holds no legal bearing. An official from the U.S. Department of Justice confirmed this, and I covered it in a previous video. You gotta check it out after this one. So anyway, make sure you guys check that video out right after this one. As always, appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one.